Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Josh Wonders Why. We are coming to you on a Wednesday instead of a Monday, so appreciate you being flexible this week and watching us on a non-standard day. So glad to see you back and looking healthy. I was worried last week when you had to cancel a couple things that...
Yeah. I'm still not 100%, but I will try not to cough.
Well, that's fine.
And if I do, I will cough on my elbow like a good school child would do.
I don't worry about it. I have some coworkers that are new parents, and they seem to be with the kids going to daycare. The parents are sick every week, and I told them, I said, give it a couple years, You'll be immune to everything.
That's
and
right.
So I feel like I'm probably immune at least for the next couple years with the kids. Just they got me sick, and my body is the strongest it's been from immunity standpoint.
Yeah, that's the way it is with new teachers.
Yeah.
New teachers have to get everything, and so.
So tonight we're going to continue doing the observation celebration of Black History Month. Last week we just talked about the history of Black History Month and some ways you could observe it. This week Kelly and I are going to just go through a couple of, I guess we'll say, historical figures, inspirational Black people. I think for the most part we were comparing notes. I think we all picked females. Like everyone we picked is a female. So tonight we're going to go over some historical or inspirational Black female leaders that made some impact.
And I think that's good because I think sometimes, when you're thinking of, notable African-American people, you may think more about men than women just because of the time, the time period where, and even now, where...
Well, the first thing comes to like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or, are in the mix.
Yeah, so there you go.
So there we go. So we'll continue to celebrate Black history, even though maybe I see news articles that people or different government agencies aren't celebrating it. I saw something yesterday that CBS reported that Google, the new, I guess, update to Google Calendar, they removed some of these celebrations, like Black History Month's not on there. LGBTQ or Pride Month's not on there as well. Now their excuse was they used to try to do, it got too cumbersome to pull all the worldwide, local celebrations together, so they just want to go off of a standard calendar with standard holidays. But then they go ahead and also change it to the Gulf of America, so who knows what they're trying to prioritize, right? So anyways, I found that interesting that they just, their recent update, they took out the Black History Month and other celebration months. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about some historical figures that inspired us. One other thing I was going to bring up, because we talked about last week about observing it by, going out and maybe watching movies or reading books. And I wanted to bring up, there was a movie or a show that I was watching recently that I was not expecting to be, I guess, inspired by, or not inspired, but eye-opened to. And it was a superhero movie by Marvel, or a TV show. So this Friday is the new Marvel superhero movie of Captain America. And I'm not sure if you know anything about this, but the Captain America up to this point has been, he was a white person, blonde hair, blue eyes, that grew up in 1940s and then was frozen anyways. But he passed the baton on to a new person who is now Black moving forward. So this new Captain America is a Black superhero. And I know leading up to this, like when I saw this, I thought nothing of it, but some people are taking offense that, why is he Black? He needs to be, white. So anyways, Disney Plus did a TV show a couple years ago that sort of is like a 6-episode miniseries about, this new person taking up the mantle of Captain America. And I expected it just to be like a superhero movie, action movie, but I wasn't expected that, through that, the undertone was, his struggle was that, how can I be the face of Captain America when I'm Black and people in the country won't take me serious, right? And he struggled with that internal struggle of, do I pick up this mantle or just don't pick it up? He only decided to pick it up, and I guess his thought was, we fought for this, we suffered for this for the past hundreds of years, so not picking up would make that not worth it. So he decided to move forward with it. So I just thought that was interesting. Wow. I didn't expect those conflicts come up in a superhero TV show. Mm-hmm. So,
and I'm not really
up
on superheroes, so no offense to Captain America.
That's fine.
But I just am not. But hey, we got a good comment here. George Washington Carver invented peanut butter, possibly the greatest invention ever.
So you're seeing comments. Unfortunately, the screen is not showing any comments.
Well, and I can't get the video on mine, but I am getting the comments. So I don't. Maybe it's the snowstorm, which I don't know why they keep telling us storm warning, and then it's just like
I've been waiting for it all day to happen. Been looking for the worst, but nothing's happened. I know you've been looking forward to it. I will note, when I posted this morning, so we're going to go over some leaders, and I think the inspirational leaders we're going to talk about are not like maybe the most common known people. I wanted to pick, and we want to pick some people that maybe were lesser known, maybe to help educate you more and open your eyes to other people. I do know this morning Mary Kate posted on people that she's inspired by, which are Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Nelson Mandela are some of her ones. She also mentioned she was inspired by, if you watch the Super Bowl halftime show, the singer was Kendrick Lamar, and he did do some politicalness with his halftime show. So I found that interesting. I had not considered him to be a inspiration, but I could see how that is.
It's funny, I don't want to go there, but all the uproar about the halftime show. And it's just interesting because I watched it and I couldn't understand the words. Yeah. But I just thought, I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm old. I'm out of it. I just don't know. But, it's got a good beat.
I know.
But then there's like so much to do about it. And I was like, I just thought it was because I was old, but
either people liked it or they hated it. There's no one that was in the middle, so I'm finding from all the comments.
It's just, it's a Super Bowl halftime show, and last year we had Dolly, so.
Yeah. Taylor Swift should have been on this year, but anyway. Okay. Well, I figure we'll go back and forth. I'll start with the one from the oldest, and then we can work up to the newest, or maybe we're not going to do that, but I'll at least start, and I'll be curious if you're watching, if there's any people any black leaders, historical figures throughout history that inspired you. If you want to put those in the comments, I'd love to see them. Now, I can't see them on my screen, but Kelly, you will hopefully be able to see them on your screen. Yeah. Even though you can't see the video feed, you can see the comments. So I'll start. The first person that I found, and like I said, the 6 people we're talking about apparently are all females. We did not plan this, but it is interesting. Because those are the lesser known, I guess, unfortunately, they sort of are trumped or overlooked by the males counterparts. Mm-hmm. So the first one I'll talk about is Ida B. Wells. And she was born in 1862. She was born into slavery, but her parents were later emancipated after the Civil War. And she is best known as a journalist where she covered anti-lynching. She was activist for anti-lynching, women's suffragette, and then also early civil rights movement leader. So what happened is, I guess, how she was inspired is that when she got a first-class ticket on a train to sit in a ladies' car traveling somewhere, and she was soon told by the conductor to relocate to a smoking car. She pushed back, and they were forcibly dragged her out of the train. She noted as she was being dragged, most of the white passengers stood on their seats just to get a good view of this, and she was appalled by that, and she ended up later suing that railway company, which resulted in her receiving compensation for that harassment. And I think because of that sort of...
But then it was overturned.
It was, that's right, it was overturned by the Supreme Court, you're right, by the Tennessee Supreme Court. But still, it sort of drove her early dedication to equity under the law. And then...
Now, I have an interesting side note to that story because I was also reading about her.
Okay.
When she was being forcibly dragged off the train, she bit the guy that was dragging her off the train.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
like, that's amazing.
My sources didn't say that.
Yeah.
So she moved to Tennessee when she was 20, and she began writing for some black newspapers and speaking out against segregated schools and other forms of discrimination. And then a couple years later in 1892, her close friend was lynched. And my understanding is him and a couple other people, black people, owned a grocery store, and they got lynched because they were imposing on the economic power of the local white grocery store. Mm-hmm. So she went down there, investigated that, reported her findings in a newspaper, and it basically poked holes in the official story that was given by the white officials and highlighted more of this racial prejudice at the time. So in response to this, locals went and set fire to their office, and there's a white mob who came and tore down that office of the newspaper. Luckily, she wasn't there at the time. She was in Oklahoma, but that sort of drove home the importance of her anti-lynching activism. So from there, she went on and did more reporting of anti-lynching throughout the South, but also she did some additional reporting on women's suffragette and then also civil rights that I won't get into because we don't have that time. But one thing I found interesting is that the reporting methods that she used to track down those stories, those are still used today by people nowadays. They use the same method she used to do an investigative journalism, I guess you'll say. When she did that to expose the conditions that the African Americans were forced to live under. So I found that was really interesting how, how she came up at a time as a black female, was able to get the recognition to write these news articles, and then she developed some methods that people have used as case studies to apply today for investigative journalism. So that's all I got for Ida B. Wells. If you want to read more about her, you can simply Google her name.
Yep. All right. My first one is Bishop Leontine Kelly, and she was a bishop in the United Methodist Church. She was born in 1920, and she was married to a pastor, and then when he died, the congregation asked her to be their next pastor. And so she didn't feel called at the time, but then something changed, and by the end of the year, she was on her way to becoming a pastor herself, an elder in the United Methodist Church. So she was ordained an elder in the Virginia Conference in 1977, and in 1984, she became only the second female bishop in the history of the United Methodist Church and the first African American female bishop of any major denomination in the world.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and a bishop at the time said that he remembered some of his colleague bishops in the southeastern jurisdiction were adamantly opposed to her election. So I just think that's really cool that she got elected. She was also a founding member of Africa University.
Okay.
And that was in 1988. Well, she was founding member of the Africa Initiative, which then established Africa University in 1988. Okay. That was the first United Methodist University on the continent of Africa, which the United Methodist Church still supports today. So, and the other thing is that she often wore red. And she said, red is the color of the blood of the martyrs. Now, it's kind of a tradition that at ordination, the ordinands wear red shoes because we're wearing robes. So you can't see, if we're wearing red, but to wear red shoes.
Okay.
And especially women will do that. And
did that start with her or did that predate her? Do you know?
I don't honestly know.
Okay.
That was like a last minute factoid, but I liked it so much. And I guess because red has often been a color of, that represented blood or that represented, many different things. And so one of the things that the color red has been, I've been watching YouTube videos of this woman who likes to live like it's 1940s. So I'm learning all kinds of stuff about the 1940s. But Red lipstick was very fashionable in the 1940s, in great part because it was considered patriotic to wear red lipstick, because Hitler hated red lipstick and he didn't like women wearing makeup. And so in America, we would wear the red lipstick as kind of a statement. And I just find that fascinating.
That makes, I mean, I guess I never knew that. And I guess looking back on all the, like the period movies I've seen, or movies that took place at the time, and also seeing pictures and news articles, I just thought that women just liked to get dressed up at that time, right? But I didn't know it had significance of the red lipstick, though.
They did, but that was that was the color that became very popular for that reason, and because of rationing at that time, you didn't have a lot of money or access to clothing. But that was one thing that the government wanted you to have, your red lipstick, I guess. So
that's interesting. So the other one, next one I picked was a lady by the name of Bessie Coleman. So she is famous for, she was the first African American woman to obtain an international pilot's license. But as I'm going to tell you, she grew up in the 1920s. She faced a lot of obstacles because of her race and also her gender. But she would also say that, she loved flying because the air is the only place free from prejudice. Because no one else to judge you when you're up there, right? So she was born in 1892. She was the 10th of 13 children. And her parents were both sharecroppers in Texas who picked cotton for a landowner. She went to segregated schools, and then she went to some colored or some segregated universities, but had to drop out because she didn't have enough money to pay for school. She eventually moved to Chicago, and her brother returned from fighting in France during World War I, and he told her stories of the freedom that women had overseas that they enjoyed. He said that, hey, the women over there can be pilots, and that sparked an interest in her new dream to be a pilot. Now, she saved up money. She applied to various U.S. flight schools, but every school rejected her because she was black as well as a woman. So finally, I guess some publisher suggested that, why don't you just go to school in France, right? So she learned French, she left the United States and enrolled in a French school of aviation and got her pilot's license in 1921, within a year of enrolling. So at that time, she studied stunt flying across Europe. And when she returned to the United States in 1922, she was as an aero acrobat. So it says she amazed both black and white audiences with her daredevil feats. She would do loops, barrel rolls. She'd even walk on the wings and parachute out, which is interesting at that time. But then what's interesting is she used her fame to fight racism and segregation because she refused to fly in shows that forced black and white spectators to enter through separate gates. So nice. In 1923, she survived a bad accident, but she recovered and kept doing flights or stunts again. Her goal was ultimately to open a school for black pilots, but unfortunately, she got another accident a couple years later, and then she died from that accident. But because of that, she sort of paved the way to inspire many black women pilots that came up after her from that. But I found it interesting that, she didn't, just stop with her dream because she couldn't get into the schools. She goes, well, if I go to France, I guess I got to study French. And she knew enough French to be able to enroll in that school and pass it within a year, which is impressive. So I found that was pretty interesting, inspiring story just listening about her.
Yeah. All right, so my next one is Anne Atwater.
Okay.
And she was quite the activist in the 60s. And she was poor. Her husband left her and the kids. And somebody finally invited her to a meeting about inequality, to address poverty and inequality. And so by 1967, she was employed by the United Organization for Community Improvement and was the chair of the Housing Committee. She was a member of several community groups and local Democratic Party vice president in 1968. She organized protests for better housing, boycotts, and educated citizens about their rights. She disliked the lack of respect many whites showed for blacks. According to this article that I found, at one school meeting, a school board member got up in the middle of a conversation as she was making demands for school improvements. Ignoring her and the parents with her was a mistake. She hit him over the head with a telephone receiver, and he sat down to listen.
You seem to enjoy these tidbits of violence, like with the lady biting, Ida B. Wells biting the conductor and then hitting over the head with a telephone.
That was self-defense.
So wait, this was at a school board meeting?
School board meeting, yeah.
How'd she have a telephone close to her?
I don't know.
I guess that's, especially at that time. Nowadays, we have a cell phone in our pockets, but at that time,
Yes.
I mean, was there a telephone nearby, like a rotary phone that...
Maybe.
That's
I don't
interesting.
know.
Or she have to run out and get one and then come back?
No, I don't think so. But anyway, okay, so
Yeah.
here's the important part. In 1971, she was asked to co-chair a group looking for answers for the problems of desegregations in Durham schools, because she was in, I guess I didn't say that, she was in Durham, North Carolina. So she's co-chairing this group. The other co-chair would be C.P. Ellis, leader of the Durham Ku Klux Klan. They hated each other. Ellis told an NPR interviewer that Atwater was an effective boycotter making progress, and he hated her guts. She wrote in a column that a couple of years before they were on this, they were co-chairing this committee, she nearly slit his throat at a city meeting after he repeatedly used the N-word. She had a knife on her, and so she pulled it out. Luckily, her pastor was there, grabbed her hand, and stopped her. So the committee met for 12 hours daily over 10 days to find a solution for the Durham school desegregation problem. And, they were just knocking heads. And then their children got them together and said that they wanted to go to school together. And that's when Ann Atwater and C.P. Ellis realized that they had more in common than not. And they had the same hopes for their children, and they had a lot in common with other poor people. And so in the end, he denounced racism and tore up his KKK card. And they became lifelong friends. So there have been two movies, The Best of Enemies and An Unlikely Friendship, that portrayed them in this whole thing. So he died in 2005, and Atwater was asked to deliver the eulogy. And then she died in 2016. But I find that story really encouraging.
Yeah, it just weighs on the point that people are so much against each other. If you just sit back and think about how much you have in common, it would open the door for a lot more, we'll say, friendships, or a lot more, understanding of why people are, despite our differences, there's a lot more we have in common than we have different.
Right.
But that's a pretty cool story.
Yes, Susan, the children speak.
What's that?
The children speak.
The children.
Because their children came to them.
Oh,
and
okay.
We want to go to school together. Will you please stop fighting each other and work this out?
Yeah, that's a nice story. The last one I have is a lady by the name of Shirley Chisholm. So
Are you sure it's not?
Okay, there's no R. Chisholm. I should have practiced this, and I apologize for anybody that knows her or if she's watching this. So she was the first African-American woman in Congress in 1968, and she was actually the first woman and African-American to seek the nomination for President of the United States from one of two major political parties in 1972. So she's been known throughout this of her outspoken advocacy of women and minorities she served Congress for 7 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. So she initially worked as a nursery school teacher, but then she decided to earn a master's degree from Columbia University in early childhood education in 1951. And then in 1964, she ran for and became the second African American in New York State legislature. And at that time, she introduced more than 50 pieces of legislation and championed racial and gender equality. And then 4 years later, she was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, it's interesting at the time, since she came from New York, I guess maybe as a sort of to go against her, she was assigned a seat on the Agriculture Committee, even though she represented people from the city. So they just said, we'll put you there. But she complained and petitioned enough until they reassigned her to an Education Committee, which suited her better because, she has she has the master's in early childhood education. And then in 1972, when she ran for the Democratic Party presidential nomination, she was actually blocked from participating in a televised primary debates. And she took legal action and was permitted to make just one speech. And then when she entered 12 primaries, she got about 152 of the delegates' votes, which are about 10% of the total. This is despite being underfinanced. And then there was also contentiousness from a predominantly male congressional black caucus because, they were probably didn't think she should be running. One of them should be running instead. So anyways, she at least went out and did that and paved the way, for Barack Obama, but also I think she helped pave the way for Elizabeth Warren in a way as she became a senator. So, she retired from Congress in 1983. But what was interesting for her is that of her legacy, she didn't want to be known as the first African American and the first woman to do that. She just wanted to be remembered as a woman who dared to be a catalyst of change. That's all. So I found that interesting as well. That was inspiring. Of just the 3 people I picked, the people you picked as well. They all faced hardships, but they didn't let that hold them back. They continued to push forward and find ways to continue to make a change in the world that was against them at the time.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. When we think about all the people who have to work so much harder, to make it, to be heard, So, okay, my last one is none other than the Indiana Conference, United Methodist Church Bishop Tracy S. Malone. So she just started this year, and she has been in the United Methodist Church all her life, and knew pretty early on that she was going to give her life to full service for Christ, and she did that. She was elected the first black woman to be the president of the Council of Bishops, of which she is still. And she says that she takes very seriously her role as a shepherd of the church, but she is quick to say that she is first and foremost a disciple of Jesus Christ. She said, "The Lord is the Lord of my life. He's the very air I breathe. My life is a prayer. I'm always praying." So she, in her free time, she likes to go bowling, and she rides her bike, and then she has a husband and 2 adult daughters, and then in August she will be a grandmother. So yeah, and then in this magazine I have 20 random facts about Bishop Malone. I will not give you all of them, but pizza is her favorite food.
Okay.
Her life verse is Romans 8:28, and she completed a century ride, which is 100 miles on her bicycle in a day.
Wow.
Well, there's also, because we talked about Bishop Kelly being instrumental in starting Africa University, there is a residence hall at Africa University named for Bishop Malone. So.
Why do you know why that is? Did she
No.
make a contribution, like taught over there or something? Okay.
I do not know. It's a good question.
Well, if you're going to throw these facts, you better,
I know.
better be able to
Well,
back them up. No, I'm kidding.
It doesn't explain it there. So she's a loud and proud Chicago Cubs fan.
Now, do you know? Now, this is you're not going. I don't know. I'll be surprised if you know this.
Okay.
But maybe you do.
I will
do you know,
too.
like, how many black female bishops are there currently in the United Methodist Church?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm just curious if she's one of like 3, or maybe it's more common now. I don't know how. I guess I don't know how I'd find that data. I'm sure if I could Google it somehow.
Oh,
Should
I
be
can
a breakdown.
Google it.
No, we don't need to worry about it now. I'm just curious. Well, that's interesting.
Now I want to know.
Well, if you can find it in the next 2 minutes as we close, we can help everybody else know if they're also sitting on the seat of their or the edge of their seat waiting. So appreciate you all watching us tonight as we're on an off night for the Josh Wonders Why. We'll be back again for the standard time next Monday, barring any inclement weather or additional illnesses that may come upon us. We'll find out. But then we'll be back live tomorrow night, same time at 8 o'clock for another Digging Deep. And I think this is the message you were planning to have last week that you're just going to move to this week, right?
Yes.
And this is going to be more of the discussing the background of Jesus going into his hometown, and basically they ask him, since he's the visiting rabbi, to go up and read a Bible verse. So he, being the humble person that he is, reads a Bible verse that brags about how he's the savior of the people, right?
Well, it's not bragging. He's just stating fact.
And then he drops the mic and walks out. But I think like we were talking last
It didn't
time.
quite happen like that. Tune in tomorrow night and I'll tell you the real story.
Well, it's interesting for the teaser though, because we were talking about this last time. Because I was up there with you. We were tasting some food afterwards, or some snacks. And I always, when I read that story, I found it interesting because, I got the impression that he wasn't welcome in his own town. They're like, this is just Jesus, who was the son of Joseph. What is he doing up here talking about this? Mm-hmm. And I always thought it was received negatively. But you're gonna flip it and say there are some viewpoints that maybe he was received positively as well.
Yeah.
So tune in tomorrow, because that's going to change my understanding of the story. Did you find any stats on?
There's a long list of bishops here, and I cannot count. I cannot go through them all, but there are multiple.
There are a handful.
There are multiple women of color.
Okay. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks all for watching. I don't know if we have any comments or questions at the end, but if there are any questions you have, any other historical black figures that have inspired you, I'd love to hear about them and learn more, because I guess I didn't want to pick the ones that everybody knew about. I want to pick ones that were probably lesser known. So if there are lesser known people that have inspired you, put them in there. I'd like to learn more about those as well. And then we're back next Monday to do another topic about Black History Month. But if there are any other topics you would like us to cover, or any questions you have related to Black History Month, you can put those in the chat, or just do a post, either anonymously or not, or just send us a private message. We'd love to talk about any topics that interest you as well. So thanks for watching. Thanks, Kelly, for joining us and shedding some more wisdom on
you as well.
Leaders. Oh,
you as well.
Well, thank you. And until next time, we'll see you in the comments. Have a good night.
Bye.